Welcome back to The Vote Matters. I'm your host, Tia Sneum, and sitting alongside me today is the producer. Here at TVM, we discuss political topics to a nonpartisan and entertaining way to empower you, the voter. And today we're going to do a little bit of a breakdown of the vice president debate.
Yes. Yeah, actually, I thought it was actually a really good debate. For the most part, the two candidates were very civil with each other. They definitely had good tactics when it came to their debating, meaning they were all about painting the, presidential candidates about what their policies are and about sort of like why one is better than the other. And I thought they did a really good job in trying to sort of clarify where they stand with all these different topics. So in that sense, I thought the debate was actually really well orchestrated.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I think the thing that I enjoyed about the debate is both candidates seemed very passionate about their parties, right? But at the same time, they're also passionate about trying to figure a lot of the dilemmas that are occurring currently within our nation. Like, I think one of the more fascinating things for me was when they started talking about the economy. And I did not realize that one of the main reasons why our economy is struggling as of right now and why costs of living is so high is because most of the work is being done overseas, or most of all this trade that's been going on, it's between overseas partners, or they're trying to get lower waged workers to work for them, whether it's in the manufacturing industry or other industries. And I didn't know that had a direct impact to our economy.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have a lot of the labor being offshored, it basically drives down wages here in the United States, right? So you see things like inflation, right? And they brought that up quite a bit, where they were talking about things cost more, but you're not earning more to keep up with inflation. So clearly your cost of living is going to feel like it's going to be a bit painful. It's not going to be easy to go and put food on the table or go spend money on additional things that you normally would, like go out to eat or go see movies or just be entertained and take some vacations. You have to start cutting back because you have to economize because of our labor price. Our wages weren't going up, but our costs were.
Yeah, no, I thought that those segments were very fascinating for me to listen to because as a voter, the way that they broke it down, it gave me a very clear understanding as to why the economy is dealing with the problems that are occurring as of the moment. Specifically, for my age group, having a difficulty to start a family, to properly afford healthcare going on, once we turn 26, and, a lot of other things that would create a more home-like environment, right?
Yeah, and I thought the candidates really, Walz and Vance both touched on key things that I think are important, right? And they sort of expressed what they think the position of their candidate is regarding the economy or regarding immigration or regarding healthcare. All these kinds of things just kept being brought up, and I thought that was good topics to talk about. And they both did a very good job in trying to paint why their candidate is the right candidate to vote for.
Yeah, I mean, from what I gathered, it seems like with J.D. Vance, he's trying to bring a lot of the offshore jobs back into America, and that seemed to be his main goal. When it came to listening to Walz, it seemed a little bit more hesitant on his end on exactly how he was going to help fix the economy, and I think it's because, we've noticed that the running mate that he has, in the last 3.5 years, this is where a lot of the dilemmas have kind of came from. But I guess, from what you heard, what are some of the strategies that will be implemented going forward by both candidates?
Well, one of the things that's really interesting is with President Trump, sort of what he did his first 4 years. So you have a record that you can look at. Was he perfect? No. But did he do immigration the way he said he was going to do it? Did the economy sort of kick and do very well under his administration? Yeah. Was he trying to tackle healthcare issues during his administration? Did it work? No. But you look at, let's say, what does Kamala run on, right? So she has to live on the record of Biden because that's who she's tied to. And that's a tough record when you start looking at inflation, when you start looking at basically wages not growing, when you start looking at the open border being porous and everything of that nature. You know, is that her policy? No, she is the vice president and is basically, when she gets on the ticket, she is working with Biden. She's not to run the administration the way she wants to, right? So we really don't know what her policies are because they really were Biden's policy. But, you know, she doesn't seem to give us clear indications based on the conversation between Walz and J.D. Vance. That didn't really come out clear when it came from like Walz's topic, you know, talking points about the strengths of Kamala. Like, how do you address that?
Well, I think like there was one instance where they did speak a little bit about insulin and how they were saying the manufacturing cost for insulin is $5, yet on the market they were selling it for $900. And, you know, I think they were able to drop the cost of insulin. So I paid a little bit more attention more so towards the healthcare and kind of like how those issues will be dealt with. But it kind of blew my mind when I heard that insulin itself only costs $5 to manufacture, and then they're selling it for $900. You know, like, and it
So
seems fishy.
yeah, it does. It what people like when somebody says, "Hey, I'm creating insulin," or "Hey, I've created a new drug," right? What they're saying is the cost to create that drug now and put it on the market costs you $5. But what did it cost to do the research and development? What did it cost to do the marketing? That's where these huge expenses are. And it's not just for insulin that there was a huge expense. There's a lot of drugs that pharmaceutical companies, and believe me, I am not trying to be pro-pharmaceutical. I think there's a lot of problems in that area. But when you think about it, they have a lot of drugs they put tons of money in and they can never bring into market. So they have to recoup their money in some shape, fashion, or form, right? So the ones that do go to market are usually going to be a little more pricey, even though they say it only takes $5 to manufacture. It took billions to basically do the research and development and billions to market this stuff. So there's all these additional costs I don't think they talk about, what it takes to go from cradle to grave when it comes to drugs and bringing them to market, and the ones that fail and all the money you spent on it, and you are not going to recuperate that, right? It's done.
Interesting. So that's kind of like how our healthcare system has been like operating, right? It's all through the research-based applications to create the product.
Yeah, I think, but there's also a lot of disingenuous aspects about healthcare, but I don't really want to go down that topic.
No,
I mean,
yeah.
I could just ramble on, but it was good that they talk about these things, and maybe some people are like, how could it be $5 and you're charging $900? You know, it just, they don't vet it because they only have so much time on a topic and they have to move forward. And so they try the best they can, but clearly it left you in a, scratching your head like, what's this all about? This seems like it's very crooked. And I don't think it is. I do think they do get favoritism from the government and stuff of that nature. I do think they get subsidies. They do get certain protections that I think are unfair. But, it needs more breakdown, to be quite honest. I think there needs to be more dedicated time towards this and really have experts in it. I don't think they are full-on experts in this space.
No, not and I guess that brings me to like another portion of the debate that I thought was really fascinating was when they start talking about the Second Amendment, right? And how Walz, for the longest time, every time I watched a debate between a Democrat and a Republican, they both had very firm stances on the issue. One was anti-gun, the other one was pro-gun. But what I thought was interesting about this debate is it was more catered towards mental health, right? And they were talking a lot about how the youth's top all the death rates are occurring, a big portion of the death rates with the youth is based around weapons. But I think it's also, what they were trying to talk about was more so like the mental health epidemic occurring right now with our youth, right?
Yeah, and it's it's good that they bring these things up, and I'm glad you brought up that they got more specific about where you might want to focus your legislation, or because I think there are areas where everybody can come together on, right? And I think they're reasonable areas. And I'm glad they both sort of looked at that area and they were sort of trying to explore it in a very, what I'd say, cordial way, right? It wasn't very hostile at all. It wasn't, hey, there's an attack on the Second Amendment. There is, yeah, this is an area of debate, and yeah, let's have that conversation, right? That's what I felt came from that.
Yeah, and then they talk a lot about like other issues, and with the mental health crisis being so high, and like where that's stemming from, why it's occurring, and it does. I guess for me, it's a little bit more of a soft point because I know there's a lot of people from my age group that are definitely trying to figure out what their role is currently within this nation. And I don't think when it comes to the weaponry and, the Second Amendment, it really does come down to a mental health crisis. It really does, in my opinion, right?
Yeah, but where I think everybody always gets hesitant, let's say from a Republican side, right? They say, well, once they take one thing, they're going to take all things, right? Mm-hmm. And they're very they're advocates for the Second Amendment. And the reason they're advocates for the Second Amendment the way they are is they believe without the Second Amendment, you wouldn't have the First Amendment.
Yeah.
So they say freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly is all dependent upon us also being able to protect those things. So, and that's where these conversations really have to be brought forth and really vetted versus being sort of like used as, little snippets to say, look, I'm for the Second Amendment and they're not, and really try to do something, what I think, to your point, is in the best interest of the American people. Mm-hmm. And it felt like that was sort of the vibe I was getting a little bit with these two candidates out there. They weren't hostile. They definitely had good points against each other, but they also were willing to, recognize each other's points of view. They might not fully agree, but they're like, it's an interesting point, and then they would say why maybe it's good or not. So it was good.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Any other takeaways from your perspective from the debate?
Yeah, what was really interesting is, and we're doing this sort of post-debate, but not the day after, right? So what is really interesting is sort of the presence of J.D. Vance. I think that was a bit of a shock for a lot of people. I think when you look at the different media outlets, I think that was the biggest takeaway from this debate. I mean, I think it was great they both were civil. I think they both did a good job. But what really came over was that could you see Tim Walz as president if Kamala gets in, right, and something happens to Kamala? That's a big question mark. Could you see J.D. Vance as president if Trump, for whatever reason, something happens to him? And I think that's where a lot of things sort of, just from a perspective, and a lot of the feedback you hear in the media and stuff was like, wow, that guy is polished. He seems very professional. He seemed to keep himself under control. He came off very presidential as the VP. And I think that was the big win when it came to this debate.
He took it by storm, that's for sure. And even I thought it was funny, you go on social media, even those who are devout Democrats admitted that he did an exceptional job because it was almost artistic the way that he was up there and answering the questions.
Yeah, very, very, very well. Let's just say rehearsed. Yeah, I don't want to say rehearsed, but he is basically been a senator, and now he's basically become the VP. But you can see that he is basically a very articulate, very thoughtful, able to think at the moment of what's going on. So he did. He came off polished. I mean, he came off very polished. And I'm not trying to diminish that Walz didn't do a good job. He did.
I thought he did a good job as well.
I just think J.D. Vance, just his presence, command presence, really was sort of the win in that whole debate.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a great debate. I really enjoyed the fact that I got to see both perspectives, and it was very different than our presidential debate, in my opinion. But at the same time, we're all excited for November 5th. I think this is really now going to be that final push towards the excitement that the Americans have been waiting for, right?
Yeah, it's been crescendoing, right? It's just been an incredible year and a half. Because normally nobody gets excited about it, the presidential election until you get like a couple months out, right? This one has just been off the charts. It's just been off the charts, all the things with Biden, all the things with Harris, all the stuff with Trump. I mean, it's just been incredible. And now we're finally getting to the end of this sort of play that, I don't know any other way to say. We're now into Act 3. And we're going to see the finale of this thing. And I think it's just going to be incredible.
Well, thank you guys for staying tuned. Hopefully you enjoyed this discussion, and get ready for November 5th. As always, the vote matters. Stay tuned for more upcoming content.